Good evening, you are watching ReNEWS in English. I'm Sona Tumanyan. I'll start the broadcast with sporting successes. In the Spanish capital of Madrid, Armenian athletes have once again shined. The Armenian youth weightlifting team has been named the winner of the European Championship in the team standings. The Armenian Weightlifting Federation reports that our national team became the best thanks to the International Federation's points calculation. On the final day of the European Youth Weightlifting Championship, Harutun Hovanesyan won the gold medal in the total for the 94 kilogram weight category. Incidentally, Hovanesyan also set a new European youth record in the snatch exercise. In the clean and jerk, the athlete settled for a silver medal, but with a total result of 346 kilograms, Harutun was declared the champion of the continent. And now let's move to Syunik province, where the President of the Republic is continuing his tour. Vahagan Khachaturian visited the substation of the Iran Armenia 400 kV overhead power transmission line located near the Noravan settlement. The President observed the completed work on site and inquired about the approximate commissioning dates for the substation and the overall scope of the work. The 6 political parties of the Alberaya City Council have voted in favor of a declaration presented by Compromise based on a motion from the Ararat Armenian Union of Spain and have unanimously recognized the Armenian genocide, becoming the 43rd city in Spain to officially do so. Present at the session was the president of the Ararat Armenian Union, Ararat Ghukasyan, who in his speech thanked all the members of the City Council. The members of the Alberaya City Council expressed their willingness to help the Armenian community of Spain bring the issue before other governments, including the Parliament of Spain. In their speeches, the party spokespersons condemned the genocide carried out by Ottoman Turkey, emphasized the necessity of its recognition by all countries of the world, and for reparations to be made by present-day Turkey. The water shortage has become such a serious problem that in Iran, the topic of moving the capital is being seriously discussed. The water problem is also critical in Baku, where residents have raised a major wave of protest. There seem to be no solutions in sight, and the water scarcity is becoming unbearable. Diana Karapetyan reports on the topic.
Aliyev's indifference deepens Baku's water crisis. For days, residents of Baku's Yasamal and Sarokhani districts have been forced to suffer from water scarcity or a complete lack of the vital liquid. The water shortage has become not only a daily inconvenience, but also a vital threat, considering that water intended for firefighting is sometimes sold at the unimaginably high price of 30 manat per cubic meter to the population of the water-deprived city. This is in a context where $1 is equivalent to 1.7 manat.
It's been 3 days without water. We have to take water from yards and gardens just to drink.
Baku residents are complaining, stressing their skepticism of the notion that the quality of life for the population is being managed under a conservation regime. Some even note that they are left thirsty while the Aliyev regime demonstratively spends millions of manat in the occupied territories of Artsakh.
It's impossible to live in the building without water. How did we end up in this situation? I come home from work and the money I've made goes right to buying water.
The wave of public protest is fierce. Citizens are demanding immediate solutions to ensure their fundamental right to access water. This situation demonstrates how political instability, corruption, and governmental inefficiency lead to social crises, the consequences of which are primarily borne by ordinary citizens. Diana Kripatian, ReOpen Media.
A new statement has come from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The statement is about the OSCE, which, according to an article by Lavrov published in Rossiyskaya Gazeta, also failed in Nagorno-Karabakh.
The Minsk group was never able to create the conditions for dialogue between the conflicting parties, and after its Western participants withdrew from cooperation with Russia, it completely lost its relevance.
Russia, the United States, and France are the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group and hold the mandate for the settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Paris and Washington ceased cooperation with Moscow as soon as the special military operation began. Russia is featured prominently in the international news feed, especially after the meeting between President Vladimir Putin and Syrian Foreign Minister Assad Hassan al-Shaibani. Damascus has called it historic and noted that this is the beginning of a new phase of political and military understanding between the two countries. Putin stressed Russia's absolute rejection of any Israeli intervention or attempts to divide Syria and reaffirmed Moscow's commitment to supporting Syria and its reconstruction and the restoration of stability. Meanwhile, the West is not sitting idly by on the negotiation front. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told Fox News Radio that Washington and Moscow have had diplomatic contacts this week to find ways to stop the war in Ukraine. In any case, there are no tangible results. David Genjoyan presents the International News Roundup in a video report.
Russia has launched missile and drone strikes on Kyiv, killing 16 people, including 2 children, injuring more than 155. This brings the total death toll, including casualties from the previous day, to 27. In the Ukrainian capital, firefighters are battling the resulting fires, and rescuers are searching for people under the rubble. President Zelensky has stated that peace without strength is impossible. Overnight, Russian air defenses shot down or intercepted 60 Ukrainian drones. Donald Trump has called Russia's actions disgusting and stated that he will impose sanctions, again emphasizing that the war in Ukraine is Biden's war, not his. He promised to send a special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Russia in the near future, following a visit to Israel. Trump has called on Russia to make peace with Ukraine by August 8th, threatening sanctions against Russia and countries that purchase energy from it if they fail to do so. German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul has stated that the recognition of a Palestinian state should take place at the conclusion of negotiations for a two-state solution. He emphasized that a stable solution to the war in Gaza is only possible with peaceful coexistence of Israel and Palestine. Amid threats of annexation by Israel, Wadephul warned that unilateral actions would compel Germany to respond. Berlin's cautious position is attributed to its historical guilt over the Holocaust and the influence of pro-Israel media. The U.S. and its allies have accused Iran's special services of developing plans to carry out assassinations and abductions in Europe and North America, deeming it a violation of their sovereignty. NATO allies assert that Iranian services are collaborating with criminal organizations to attack journalists, dissidents, and officials. The U.S. and the U.K. have demanded that Iran immediately cease these illicit activities. Syria's new leadership, headed by interim President Ahmed al-Sharia, is seeking to establish pragmatic relations with Moscow despite being on opposing sides during the civil war. Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani met with Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov in Moscow to discuss bilateral cooperation and Syria's reconstruction. Al-Shabani called on Russia to support the transitional justice process and to review former agreements. Russia, while maintaining its military presence in Syria, has expressed its readiness to help preserve Syria's unity and independence. David Genjoyan, ReOpen Media.
Let me note that China and Russia will conduct joint naval exercises in the Pacific Ocean in the coming days near Russia's Vladivostok region. The exercises, called Joint Sea 2025, will be conducted in air and sea spaces, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Defense announced. Trump versus BRICS. Trump has been particularly infuriated by BRICS' plan to circulate a currency alternative to the dollar. Meanwhile, more and more countries are expressing a desire to join the organization. BRICS has also created the status of partner countries. At the recent summit held in the Rio de Janeiro on July 6 to 7, the organization focused on reforms to global governance. A priority in BRICS' vision is to promote trade in local currencies and reduce dependence on the dollar. Anaharu Tumian reports on this conflict, which is rooted in economics.
Trump's threat to impose a 10% tariff against BRICS countries pursuing anti-American policies has inflamed global trade tensions. BRICS members, including China, Brazil, India, and South Africa, have sharply rejected the accusations, stating that their policies are aimed at global cooperation, not against the U.S. Against this tense backdrop, BRICS leaders insist that their goal is to create economic alternatives without conflict.
This is a group of countries that wants to find another way to organize the world from an economic point of view. I think that's why BRICS makes people uncomfortable. The world needs to find a way so that our trade relations do not have to pass through the dollar. Of course, we must be responsible about it and implement it carefully. It is something that happens gradually until it solidifies. The group does not seek to compete with any other power, and we are confident we will sign a trade agreement with the U.S.
Tariffs should not be used as a tool of coercion and pressure. BRICS seeks win-win cooperation and does not target any country.
According to political scientist Nourair Dunamalian, the tariff war, which pursues more political than economic goals, is used as leverage against other states, for example, the European Union, as in the case of a recent tariff reduction from 30% to 15%. This policy has been traditional for the U.S. since the 19th century.
The concept of anti-American, from Trump's perspective, should be interpreted in a sense as anti-Trump. Trump might label any action that, in his opinion, contradicts the conservative or Republican ideals he holds as anti-American.
According to economist Vardan Aramian, Trump is using his economy's potential against other smaller countries.
I think Trump's statement was made simply for him to defend himself. He understands that if the Chinese retaliate with their promised high tariffs, it's 10% today, right? And if they raise them further, it will also hit the United States.
In 2000, the US and its allies in blue held dominance in global influence, but by 2025, China and its allies have significantly expanded their economic influence. According to The Economist, the United States' dominance over 57% of global trade and financial flows, which are quoted and conducted in dollars, significantly exceeds the share of China and the euro.
From an economic standpoint, in terms of GDP, the United States has a GDP of around $29 trillion based on 2024 results, while China's is $19 trillion in nominal dollar terms. Adjusted for purchasing power parity, or PPP, China's economy has a higher GDP than the United States. China has greater production, a larger market, and in a sense, China is self-sufficient. This means its domestic market is over 1 billion people. So while China will suffer losses, yes, it will not lead to China's economic collapse in a sense.
Armenia has recently expressed a desire to get involved in the processes of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, which is closely linked to BRICS.
BRICS and the SCO represent more of the idea of a multipolar world order model, and today we are seeing a certain crisis of that idea, because after the war between Israel and Iran, after the 12-day war, we saw that China, Russia, and especially India are not, in a sense, ready to defend the ideas they represent. If we step away from politics, pure economic thought and numbers suggest that from this perspective, it is better for us to work with the US market than the Chinese market in terms of trade, because in any case, the trade volume with the Chinese is much larger. And I'm not even mentioning the Russia factor, because Russia is also a member of BRICS.
Armenia is already a member of several large organizations. For small states, economic development often depends on access to foreign markets.
From an economic point of view, the most important thing for a small state is to gain access to a large market, so that its production can be directed to those large markets, and they can try in a sense to use those markets. But if we're talking about the EAU,
in this context, the processes of BRICS and the SCO, with the participation of small states like Armenia, according to experts, contribute to the formation of economic alternatives, expanding trade opportunities, and reducing dependence on unilateral markets. Anna Haratyan, ReOpen Media.
And Armenia's Minister of Economy regularly speaks about economic growth, even as export volumes fluctuate. Simon Hovhannisyan discusses the topic with experts in his report. Incidentally, the halt of gold transit from Russia, which is bound to affect Armenia's economy, is also at the center of economists' attention.
In May, imports decreased by about 20% and exports from Armenia by almost 40%, compared to the data from the same month last year. The reason for this decline, published by the Statistical Committee, is simply the elimination of the practice of Russian gold transit through Armenia's territory, Minister of Economy Gevorg Papoyan wrote on Facebook. According to him, the gold transit provided a close to zero benefit to Armenia's economy and its people.
In the first half of 2025, economic activity grew by 6.3% and a record number of jobs, 796.5 thousand, and salaries were recorded. This means that economic growth is reaching the majority of the population and affects millions of people, not just a few families, as has been the case for a long time.
Government did not specifically emphasize the contribution of gold. According to Lilia Amirkanyan, those re-exports were not properly capitalized, and naturally the benefit was small. The Economist also forecasts a further slowdown in growth.
If in January 2023, the Economic Activity Index was 11.4% compared to the same period in 2022, this year, January-June is at 6.3% compared to January-June of last year. So let's note the trends: 11.4%, 10.4%, and 6.3%. Although just for the January-June period, in this context, a 6.3% economic growth is not a bad indicator for us.
The Economist believes that a positive shock had emerged against the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war, which is now dissipated. Although we are now facing certain problems at the borders with exported goods, The Economist characterizes the cause as a lack of systemic solutions. Papoyan himself spoke about cognac and beverage exports at today's government session. He said it turns out we do produce good quality products.
Another country is conducting inspections and over 90% are positive. They send me the statistics every day. For example, 15 vehicles, 15 positive. 20 vehicles, 19 positive, 1 negative. 22 vehicles, 21 positive, 1 negative. 17 vehicles, 17 positive. The statistics, when I add them up, show we have over 95% positive results. And that's not say because those were specific vehicles, but rather these were the accumulated vehicles, meaning those people didn't even know they were going to be inspected.
Despite the high quality, the cognac is still being released from Georgia batch by batch. Also today, the government decided that over the next 5 years they will invest 98 billion drams for the development and implementation of an export strategy. It is projected that, as a result, exports will grow by about 1.7 times and reach $16.9 billion. Simon Hovhannisyan, ReOpen Media.
New recruits have sworn an oath to defend the homeland without hesitation. The oath-taking ceremonies for conscripts have begun in the Armed Forces of the Republic of Armenia. The Minister of Defense posted a video with an accompanying caption. I'm Sona Tumanyan. This is ReNews. Stay informed with us. Goodbye.